The book is written by Charlotte Bronte. I don't really know how to pronounce it, but I think it's that. I've read the book for English to do a book report about, which I'm making now. First I'm going to tell you what the book is about, then I'm going to tell you something about the writer, the person who wrote the book, then I'm going to tell you if you should or should not read the book. Alright, this book is about a lady who's called Jane Eyre, ironical because that's also the title, who lives with her aunt, Mrs. Reed. She did not really like Jane, and one day she was sick of her big mouth because Jane was rude to Mrs. Reed. So Mrs. Reed sent Jane to Lowood, which is a house for orphan kids, but where Jane didn't like it at all because people were nice there. Um, she didn't like it there at all until she met a girl called Helen Burns and a nice teacher called Miss Temple. Thanks to those people, she didn't do bad there, and she taught herself a lot with the help of the teacher and her good friend. Jane was sent there when she was 10 and she stayed there until she was 18 years old. But the last 2 years of her staying there, she became a teacher herself. She learned how to teach and she taught some children there. Then she was tired of being there for so long, so she applied for a job as a governess, which is pretty much like a teacher for children. She got a job to tutor a little girl called Adele. Jane fell in love with the man of the house called Mr. Thornfield. Um, at the beginning, he didn't fall in love with her because she wasn't very pretty, but she had a nice inside. She was kind and stuff. And after a while, he also began to like her. And when he finally agreed to marry her, they were standing in the church, and two men came in who claimed that Mr. Thornfeld still had a wife who was alive, so she couldn't marry him. Jane was very upset and mad, so she left, so she ran away. Later in the book, she hears that Mr. Thornfeld, his wife, was still alive, and that she burned down the house and jumped off the roof. And Mr. Thornfeld lost his sight and one of his hands while trying to save his wife. Now I'm going to tell you something about the writer. The writer, Charlotte Bronte, lived from 1816 to 1855. She was a British writer and had two sisters who also wrote romance, the same book that she did. She didn't call herself Charlotte Bronte in her books, but she called herself Currer Bell. She and both of her sisters, who also wrote books, died from tuberculosis, which was back then in the days, it was one of the most deadly diseases you could get. Now I'm going to tell you if you should read the book or not. I don't think you should read the book if you if you like books that are exciting, because Jane Eyre was, to be honest, a pretty boring book. I didn't really like it at all. It was about love, and that's not really a subject that I like to read books about. It was not exciting. There was not something that made you want to read more of the book. It was pretty boring. And yeah, I don't recommend reading it unless you do like books about love, because then it's a pretty nice story. It can touch you, I think. But I don't really like that kind of books. This Now I'm going to tell you something about other persons in the book, other characters. First of all, there's Mr. Thornfeld, who was the owner of the house. He had a wife called Mrs. Thornfeld who lived in the attic because she was crazy. So the wife who lived upstairs. There's the little girl Adele who Jane taught. She was French, I think. Yeah, French. And there's Mrs. Reed, the aunt of Jane. She didn't like Jane at all, so she was pretty much a bitch. And there was another sir who wanted to marry Jane, but Jane wasn't interested because she was in love with Mr. Zeijderveld. is het Doornveld. This was my book presentation about Jane Eyre. I hope you liked it and you thought something of it.